Family, this is October 2nd, 2020. I heard some people saying this was Nat Turner's birthday, and I'm not usually a birthday celebrant or whatever, but I said to myself, if we talking about Nat Turner, right, then it's high time that we get to the real story of Nat Turner, and who better to consult us about the real story of Nat Turner than Malcolm X? Oh, Machiavelli? No, not Machiavelli. But then Onitaset Kumat himself, we're going to go back in time, and we're going to go back to December 21st, 2011. So almost 9 years ago, back when I was a young buck. And we're going to read this article I wrote called The Allegory of Nat Turner. But of course, we're gonna see if we could put a little bit more thing on it. So let's go. This right here says, this here is the allegory. So I start off all the things with listen, siblings, I come in peace, right? And qualities of a moral order are measured by deeds. And that's a Kemet. That's a power from Kemet. So I say, this here is the allegory of Nat Turner. This ancestor loved us and showed it. And if you love his example, you write the ABS to help build African blood siblings community centers. Subscribe, share, and love. Of course, this was kind of ignored, but but it is what it is, right? I'm gonna use the G word. It looks like I try not to use the G word, but back in the day I used the G word. Maybe I'll replace it with Amon, but we'll see. So this is the Allegory of Nat Turner by Onitaset Kumat. Oh yeah, of course, right here I should mention that we do got brother Machiavelli in the building. He's gonna be giving some side commentary because he fancies himself a comedian. You already know, but it is what it is. I mean, it's good. Like, it's good. It's good. Yeah, this is a good young brother. He been on his stuff. He had his own big platform once upon a time. So, we all do what we got to do. So let's go into it. So the story of Nat Turner from 1800 to 1831. So he passed away at 31. Right now I'm 31. So that's not a good sign. But let's go. The story of Nat Turner's begins with his father's successful return to Africa. Okay, so from jump, Nat Turner's father somehow managed, like in 1800s, to go to Africa, right? But when Nat Turner attempted the same, he was caught and brutalized. He reasoned that Amon wanted him to escape with his people. Thereafter, this was his concentration. So that's really interesting. Now, this kind of like confused me back when I was younger, when I was like, you know what, I want to do like Nat Turner and escape with my people, right? But I realized that I think his father had the more important lesson, in the sense that his father just dipped, had nothing to do with slavery anymore. Now, of course, somebody might ask, like Machiavelli did, which is, why didn't he take his son with him? But like, back in those days, it really, like, I don't think travel was that easy. It probably would have been less easy with a child. And it's the same thing today. Travel's not that easy. It's less easy with a child. Even like, for instance, if I want to go to Africa with my kid, I gotta pay the same fare, and of course that's easy compared to escaping a plantation and somehow finding a boat, that will take you back to Africa, even though you are technically property of somebody else. So more power to the father. I'm not 100% sure the father actually made it back to Africa, but more power to the father. All right, let's go. He heard voices bidding him to arise and free his people. Such is your luck. Such you are called to see. Let it come rough or smooth. You must surely bear it. He also saw the sky morph to forecast the victory of Africans over Europeans. I'll use the G word, for God is on our side. Finally, on May 12th, 1828, the Holy Spirit appeared to him, told him the yoke of Jesus had fallen on him, and that Nat Turner must prepare to fight the serpent. The Holy Spirit also advised Nat to keep his lips sealed until he sees the sign in the sky. So, what I could say about all that is, what was it? Like you could tell he's like really religious, I think that's like one of the main things that we have to, like, we really want to pick up on this. So, because sometimes we're like, oh, we don't like Christians, and we don't like how Christians blah 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 blah. But like, Nat Turner was a Christian, and he seemed pretty all right. Let me just make sure. Oh yeah, so like, I'm just looking at the chat. Somebody did a silly joke. He said, yeah, y'all can see that. All right, let's go. We got 170 people listening. You know, so let's go. I'm just messing. The Holy Spirit also advised Nat to keep his lips sealed. Okay. In February 1831, the sign came. The sun was eclipsed, and from the heaven was a voice with his message, "Arise and slay the enemies of God with their own weapons." Nat Turner trembled. I don't know if I even spelled that right, but anyway, trembled, but thereafter broke the seal. Having watched fellow enslaved Africans, he divulged his plan to the trustworthy, and they recommended more. At noon Sunday, August 31st, 1831, 7 of them, Henry, Hercules, Nelson, Sam, Will, Jack, and Nat, went to the woods, laying plans and taking oaths of liberty or death. They planned to attack the Europeans in Southampton County, Virginia, where Nat Turner was born, then retreat to Dismal Swamp, where they would make a headquarters. So what people don't know about Dismal Swamp is that that's like Maroon Town in America, right? So they were on the plantation. They were going to attack Southampton, and then they were going to retreat to Dismal Swamp. Their planning ended at midnight, so they're planning for quite a bit of time, taking oaths, which is really important. Like right now, few of us are taking oaths, you know, about African, but like back in the day, that's what people were doing, right? Their planning ended at midnight. The head of the plantation slept in his bed when Nat Turner snuck into the mansion, took all the weapons they could find, and tiptoed to the head's bedroom. Sorry. Let me just make sure that I'm showing the right screen. Okay. Nat raised his hatchet and cut the sleeper's head. The European awoken and shouted for help when Will brained him. There the wife ran in and met a similar fate. Before Nat Turner and company left the house, all other 4 members, including the baby, were no more. Nat Turner had his regrets, but remembered that his people were stolen from Africa and mistreated ever since. In addition, he properly forecasted that the Europeans would do far worse if ever they gained the upper hand. You know, so that's another thing. It's like, if you're going to kill people, make sure you kill everybody. I mean, I'm not going to say that the baby, I mean, even the baby, I guess, because, you know, a baby crying through the night is a good tip-off, you know? And that's the sad part about revolution and real life, you know, warfare, is that, you know, like when it comes down to it, like there's like your children, the children that you have right now, are vulnerable, you know, because like even when we talk about Gaddafi, I don't really care for Gaddafi, but like if you were paying attention during that time, you know that, matter of fact, I wrote this during that time, right? But you know that America killed like his whole family, like his heirs and everything, you know. So, or like a lot of his family. So it's like that's just one of the things that you have to understand about revolution, understand about war, and understand about even being a parent. You know, that unfortunately, you know, the beautiful children in your life, you know, and that's for us, obviously, for our people. But that they can be victims of your enemies, you know. But of course, you know, these white folk made enemies of black folk. We weren't really their enemies per se. But of course, you know, it depends on who you're listening to. Chance Williams will tell you we was always enemies. But all right, let's go. Nat Turner had his regrets, but remembered, blah, blah, blah. So the 7 of Nat Turner's ilk mounted horses and proceeded to the next plantation. Before morning, they had an army of 50 surrounding different mansions, holding it sieged until foot soldiers went in for the slaughter. In this way, some 50 Europeans were killed and no Africans died. Okay, so no Africans died. This was a pretty successful, like in a sense, you would say this would have been a successful race riot in a sense, right? But of course, finally nearing the county seat called Jerusalem, right? Nat meant to surprise the inhabitants and kill them before news went to Richmond or Petersburg, right? So it's kind of like you rush on them, right? There he could seize arms, ammunition, and money. He gave the order to march, and his small army killed every European met on the way. However, when they came to the gates of Parker Plantation, much before Jerusalem, someone suggested they go in, kill the Europeans, and pick up more recruits. Now this is really important right here. So Nat Turner objected as time was pressing, but the majority thought otherwise, and Nat Turner yielded. This was where his triumphant act wavered. Okay? So I want to stress this too. So they have a plan. They say, look, we're going to head to Jerusalem. Right? It sounds like some religious shit, but like we're gonna head to Jerusalem where there was a fort, right? They're gonna go to the fort, and this is another thing you want to remember too. That there's this movie that's out about Nat Turner called Birth of a Nation, and it totally depicts like a whole wrong story. But this right here is like the real story of they were like, cause in the movie they got to the fort and they were ambushed somehow, but in real life they never got to the fort, you know. Instead they decided like the majority was like, oh, we kill it now, yeah, let's do this. And then Nat Turner was like, oh, okay, all right, sure, we'll take this little detour. And so when they got to this, so then they went to the Parker plantation, and that was like the end. So like basically, 40 of the men went to the mansion 6 miles away. 6 miles away. Look at that. Nat and the remainder stayed behind to block the roadway. Hours passed. After Nat left the roadway to search for his men, armed Europeans appeared to bluff the Africans into submission. Right? Nat Turner returned to hear the Europeans shout to the Africans that they should drop their guns on penalty of a whipping. Nat Turner had to remind them, though it speaks to us too, that they were no longer creatures of the banjo or the shakedown, but soldiers of Christ fighting for the right. He then gave the orders to fire. The Europeans fled, leaving behind their dead or wounded. Right? So, like you see what I'm saying, white people tried to tell us, tell our ancestors, drop your guns and all you get is a whipping. And Nat Turner said, nope, we're going to shoot you. Right? But you see what I'm saying, though? Like, they did some sort of little tactic to try to take the mansion while they were blocking the roadway, and I guess the people who went to the mansion, just didn't get a victory, and but because of that, like they alerted the Europeans were able to mobilize, and that's it. So Nat Turner dashed after them, cutting them down, but the survivors ran into a strong body of reinforcements, which in their encounter made Nat Turner's army flee. Right? So still with the 20. So now he had 20. He insisted that the attack on Jerusalem be made. They hesitated. He picked up 20 more recruits and attacked the plantation of Major Ridley. The next day, reaching Dr. Hunt's plantation, Nat Turner encountered organized Europeans. So they already figured out what was going on. He told his men to scatter, but instructed they meet up that night. No one showed. So Nat Turner then took to the woods. In the meantime, the news had reached Richmond and the United States government had been appealed to. It sent 2 warships along with 800 Marines to keep us in slavery. The Virginia State Militia was also organized. These groups are the ancestors of today's Europeans in America. Since this organization, an indiscriminate slaughter of Africans began. On the first day alone, fully 100 Africans were killed. Nat Turner's efforts killed roughly 55 Europeans. Still, other Africans were tortured. Further, a full 600 Europeans with bloodhounds mobilized to find Nat Turner. Nat Turner was successfully hiding in a hole in the woods for 6 weeks. Unfortunately, by accident, he had left fresh meat in the hiding space, and a dog came in and ate it, returning the next day with a group of enslaved Africans to eat again. Then Nat was in the hole, and the dog barked wildly. When the Africans investigated, Nat Turner, believing they had come in search of him, begged them not to betray him. But they did. They ran straight to the Europeans, who sent 1,000 armed men to find Nat Turner, who then was hiding in a tree. Threatened with being shot, he gave himself up. A few days later, he was brought to court, attended by thousands who wished to catch a glimpse of he who had spread the fear of insurrection in all the slave states. His lawyer, Gray, said to this of him, clothed with rags, covered with chains, yet daring to raise his manacled hands to heaven, with a spirit soaring above the attributes of men, I looked at him, and my blood froze in my veins. I want to actually stress this again, that he was hiding for 6 weeks, so 6 weeks hiding. But of course, how are you going to get out? It's like you're surrounded, but let's keep going, right? On November 11th, which I guess would be Veterans Day in America, but it's also the independence of one of these countries. I did the thing. But anyway, maybe a couple of these countries, actually. But 1831, Nat Turner was hanged, serenely walking to the gallows, knowing... I said our God was with him. Anyway. But we could say knowing Amon was with him, right? There wasn't a Veterans Day in 1831, but certainly every 11th of November should memorialize Nat Turner's sacrifice. Nat Turner possesses the African genius within all of us Africans, and his love of righteousness was only outmatched by the Europeans' lust for wickedness. Take notice to how many Europeans were mobilized at the hint of our liberation. Take notice to how many Africans were punished because Africans, kidnapped individuals, wanted to return to their lands and live freely. Take notice to who, despite the Africans are kidnapped individuals, right? Take notice to who, despite the Europeans' mobilization, finally found Nat Turner, and who his capture depended on: Africans. and finally take notice to what Nat Turner's ploy began to fail. When Nat Turner's plan began to fail. In your life, you will express your genius, and it will be contrary to another's instincts. I tell you that follow your genius. I love every participant in Nat Turner's raid, but the failure related not to the heavy opposition, of which there was plenty, but in the internal opposition from our being unsure of our place. We must plan to succeed, and then keep instincts to the plan. Otherwise, the uncalculated may prove our downfall. For our enemy is a hateful one. We must stick to the course of liberation. The punishment for liberty and slavery are the same. Death. You know? So that's like the end of it. I say live long, live strong, live for Africa. And I say Hotep. I show you some other related posts. But like that's it. That's the article. I mean, obviously I only had 2 comments. And yeah, that's pretty good. But that's it though. So I mean, I know some people are listening on the Discord. So if you guys want to say what you would think, that would be cool. But what I could say is that, you know, a lot of times what we don't understand about our people. So this is one of the, like, if I would say the real lesson, because this is called the real lesson in that tournament, right? The real lesson is that, you know, a lot of your oppression, right, has to do with black folk working with the enemy. You know,
It'd be your people.
It'd be your own people. You know, and not just that. It's also, like I said, too many chiefs and not enough Indians. You know, like Nat Turner. Like if somebody's organizing something, right? You have to just follow them. If you want to be a part of their organization, then follow them, right? But if you want to lead an organization, then make your own organization. You know? Don't go into somebody else's organization and then, like, just mess it up for them. You know? Like, Nat Turner could have possibly, the plan could have worked and have ended slavery in America in 1831. Okay? I mean, it's questionable because, like I said, the United States could still mobilize 800 people, you know, 800 Marines and 1,000, you know, so on and so forth. So it's really still questionable.
But 50 did though.
Huh?
50 trained did.
You said who?
I said, but you saw what 50 untrained Africans could do.
Exactly. Like, and that's the thing though. It's like when you capture a fort, now you have weapons. And the thing is that in the South back then, especially, black people were like the super majority. Okay, so when you're the majority and you're majorly armed, then yes, you could have went into full scale war with white folk. And if you were to go into full scale war with white folk, you could have actually won. Back then, like it would have been a lot easier to win if you had their weaponry and you had the will to win. So, like technically, like it's possible that Nat Turner could have pulled off a W. I mean, obviously it didn't happen, and you know, but like a lot of that has to do with us as a people not understanding. Like I was saying, you know, I was saying in my Discord, you know, a lot of us don't understand hierarchies. You know, if you're organizing something, right, then it's you. Then everybody else is below you in that hierarchy. You know what I mean? You can't. Like if you're the organizer, you know, so yeah, there might have been like when I listed the people in Nat Turner's group, there might have been people wiser, there might have been people whatever, but you let Nat Turner decide that. You know what I mean? Because you're coming under him. Like if you wanted to organize an insurrection, then you should have done it, and then when he shows up, you tell him what to do. You know, but instead it was, you know, if like that's the thing that we don't understand, and like I said, you know, he was successfully hiding. I don't know how many years you could possibly hide in a hole, but you know, like he was pleading with people, don't tell him. But I mean, they were terrorizing everybody because Nat Turner was still out there. So I'm not saying that, like I obviously wouldn't turn the brother in, but a lot of people were obviously going to suffer otherwise. But of course, they suffered regardless. You know, because they were enslaved. So, you know, and I mean, obviously, Nat Turner could have probably escaped at some point if he like made it up north somehow. I mean, or somehow made it to Canada or something. I don't know, just made it somewhere else. But that will never come to fruition, and that never did come to fruition. But that's the whole thing. And then here's another thing: like you see, you can successfully organize and kill, without any sort of consequence. I mean, any sort of losses. But white folk know how to mobilize quickly, and I mean, it reminds me of the other story of the brother Christopher Dorner, who I also wrote on this page. Right, I also wrote his story, but Christopher Dorner, when he was mobilized, when he like he's just one individual, and that was in like 20 something, like that was recently, like maybe like 5 years ago, and they organized 1,000 people to search for him too. So I mean, I think it's.
12.
You said what?
2012.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So like this is maybe a year after I wrote this article, right? But like he organized, like he went to, like they organized 1,000 troops after him too. So it's like, I would say the lesson is that again, you have to understand hierarchies. You have to understand that our people will turn us in. Our people, a lot of our people will turn us in. So that's the thing with Nat Turner, is that he did not tell everybody the plan. So when you're organizing, when you're organizing, you want to work with a small group of people that you could really trust. But then when you open up for the masses, you have to tell them, look, if you're going to work with us, you got to listen. Otherwise, just stay out of it. And that's something that you see here that doesn't work, because if the group is saying, no, let's attack this plantation, right? And you're like, no, that's not the plan, right? Nat Turner like sacrificed his own group for, like, he sacrificed his life for that. Like Nat Turner, I would say, going back in time, I would say, look, you have your core group. You just make sure your core group is listening, and you say, look, if you guys want to attack this mansion, that's fine. I'm not blocking the roadway. I'm not doing that. That's what I do on my Discord, matter of fact. People be saying blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, look, if you want to do whatever you want to do, you go do that. You know what I'm saying? I'm not doing no shit except for what I want to do. You know what I mean? And I mean, some people are like, that's not the way to go. But it's like, I'm not fit to die over somebody else's, like I said, somebody else's ego. They want to be listened to, or they want to be heard. It's like, that's not my interest. If I'm going to die, I want to die on my own terms, not on your terms. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, that's like one of the things that I like. I'm saying, like I think that was a really important person. Like Nat Turner is a really important person to learn from. I mean, I'm not really a fan of the Christianity thing, but you see, it's more than the Christianity thing. I mean, he uses it, and it's really influential in his life, but it's more than that. It really talks about warfare, and unfortunately, the lack of discipline that our ancestors had. And I mean, obviously, you can't expect much discipline, but that's also why you have to like train your troops. Now, it's a lot harder in his situation, because it's 7 people who suddenly manage 50 strangers, and then these 50 strangers, have their own ideas of revenge and all that stuff, and they have like, blah blah blah. So like if you're trying to do any sort of revolution, you have to know that even if you have your core group, you still have to train your other people. And if you're training your other people, obviously that can compromise the whole mission. Because like let's say you're in Africa, and you forget this white boy for now, and you're like in Africa, and you want to get some more land in Africa from like a neighboring country or some shit, right? If the neighboring country figures out what you're doing, like, they're gonna send people to kill you. You know what I mean? They're gonna find ways to kill you, try to kill your family, all that type of shit, So like you have to like try to figure out ways to protect yourself too. And like if you're training people to do some sort of insurrection and all that, you also have to realize that, that makes you vulnerable. Like now all of a sudden it's like you're training people. There's a lot to it, but I would say this is one of the real lessons. Anybody else got something to say before we close it out? Okay. All right. So anyway, so that's pretty much it. I just wanted to do a quick podcast, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. This was allegedly Matt Turner's birthday, and I mean, just drop some likes, You know, I see 170 people, only one like. So, you know, let's do this. All right, then. Shem Yemotep. Dang, I should have said something about my book.
Do you think? Oh, you cut it off.